Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our November Global Business Leader Forum. And today we're going to be going into some depth in regard to the systems attribute with guest thought leader and author David Jenyns coming from Melbourne, Australia. David, good morning tomorrow in Australia.
Yes. Hey, Keith. Very welcome. Looking forward to the session.
Excellent. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We've got a lot to cover today. You've got some fantastic content. And so tell us first a little bit about your journey. You haven't always been a thought leader and author. Tell us where the journey started in your business career.
I feel like I've been uh, an entrepreneur since day dot. I remember when I left school, I just was thinking, how do I make the most money and what's the next project and thing that I can get up and running? And I kind of just leapfrogged from one thing to the next. So I've been involved over the years in a variety of different businesses, everything from the stock market, education space to we owned a rock and roll clothing music store that we franchised, and we were actually modeling on the US store Hot Topic and bringing it here to Australia, and digital agency, video production business. Actually tried quite a few different things. I'm probably most well known for my last business, which was a digital agency here in Melbourne that became really popular in Australia. And it's funny though, that business was the business that really trapped me inside the operations for about 10 years. And I learned a lot of what I know about systems from that business and really extracting myself from that. And then discovered my passion, which is the systems side of things and systemology and helping business owners and leadership teams remove key person dependency and grow the business beyond the founder and even beyond any of the key team members as well.
Excellent. And David, we're going to roll up our sleeves today. And so we're going to be looking for a volunteer in a little bit. Tell us, for the audience listening in, what the attributes of someone who might want to volunteer and get some real value out of today's session.
So if we're looking for someone who can help, I suppose, the entire group, because we've got a few interactive parts in the session and everybody will be following along thinking about their own business, but I'd love to find a volunteer who has a business that already has some good traction. I would say somewhere between 10 to 25 staff would be ideal. Something where the business owner is still involved in a lot of the operations, or they're, jumping into each of the different departments. They might have dabbled with some systems and processes, but have never really felt like they've nailed it or built some sort of systems culture. And look, any industry can work. I think service-based business is probably just easier for the group. But if you feel like you meet that criteria, it'd be great if you can pop a note in the chat. You can mention that you'd be happy to be a volunteer. We'll get Keith to keep an eye on that. And then when the time comes, we'll elevate you up. We'll work through the exercise as a group, which I know you'll find personally very valuable. And then it also help the group as well as they go through the same exercise for themselves.
Okay, great, great. Well, let's go ahead and dive into some of the content to get us started.
Yeah, perfect. So let me go ahead. I'm going to jump over to a quick little presentation that I've got here. And there we go. I'm just going to make sure that my slide deck is sharing okay for you there, Keith.
Yeah, can see
Yeah,
very clearly. Thank you.
perfect. So um, being that we've got a limited time and there's a lot to cover, we can dive straight into it. I already gave you a little bit of a background on how I got started. I think one thing I did want to mention is I don't have some fancy uni degree. I'm not some Six Sigma black belt or a lean consultant or something like that. A lot of what I've done is through the School of Hard Knocks, applying it in real world business. I've been fortunate to be able to have started three businesses, built them up to the point where they worked without me, and then sold and exited them. And then in the latest business, I've heavily consulted with lots of different businesses going through that sort of same sort of phase and stage. So I've heavily focused on the systems and building systems culture. And I just want to provide some of those shortcuts. And I feel like that's, a big reason why we fit so well with gravitas and the seven attributes of agile growth. Particularly, obviously, there is the systems attribute that we're going to be speaking with as well. But Keith, has been quite particular with his partners and things to find ones where it's kind of like real application. This stuff actually works. And works in the real world. And that's why I think systemology kind of fits hand in hand, because it's a little bit different from, as I said, something like a Lean or a Six Sigma. A lot of those methodologies, when we think about improving process, like a lot of it's in the name, it's process improvement methodologies when we think about Lean and Six Sigma. But what that does is that kind of steps over, well, what happens if you haven't yet clearly identified what your best practice is? Like, you can't improve what it is you haven't yet first identified. And systemology is about uncovering what is the current best practice and elevating everybody up to that level, because a tremendous amount of wins can happen inside your business by figuring out who is your best salesperson, who is your best operations person, who is the best person in finance or whatever department it is. Find out what the best people are currently doing, bring everybody up to that level. That becomes the new baseline. And then a lot of those other process improvement methodologies can come later. And even things like, I find, ISO accreditation and things like that, they heavily focus on this idea of building systems, but it's really just to tick a box so they can apply for a big project where, when they submit their tender, they're required to have got systems in place. But it's not about building the culture. And a lot of what we'll talk about today is building a systems culture inside your organization. And we're going to cover 4 main areas. We're going to talk about, firstly, where are you now? And I'll go through the 4 stages of business systemization. We'll swap over to the iPad in a moment and have a look at that. We'll then talk about where do you start, which is probably the most common question I get, which is, if I'm going to systemize my business, well, what are the first systems I should really put my attention on? And that's where we'll walk through the exercise. We'll take the volunteer once we've got that person identified, and we'll go through an exercise I call a critical client flow. Then I want to talk a little bit about how you can quickly and easily create systems. Oftentimes, a lot of people overcomplicate their systems and they put unnecessary detail, and they try and optimize for every possible scenario, and it stops you actually getting the work done. So we'll talk about some ways to simplify the systems creation process. And then want to finish up with Keith talking a bit about getting your team on board, because there's going to be resistance that you come up against when you start to introduce this new way of doing things and building a systems culture. And we want to see if we can identify some of those challenges up front, think about how you can overcome them. And then if we've got some time at the end as well, we can take some questions to answer specific things you might have if you're like, oh, I know I'm going to have trouble because I've tried to do systems in the past and my team didn't follow them. Or, oh, our business is too creative. Or, oh, our business, everything's bespoke. Every time every new client comes through, we're doing something unique. I want to address some of those challenges. So again, we'll just keep an eye out for that volunteer and we'll jump over to them in a moment. But I just wanted to jump over the iPad now and we'll cover the first 2 points, which is where are you now and where are you going to start systemizing your business? And let me just jump over here. Jump over to the iPad. And how does that sound, Keith? I know we've got 60 minutes, so we'll jam through all of this.
That sounds great.
All right. Okay, so the first idea and concept that we want to kind of talk through is this idea of where are you now? Where do you want to get to? And having worked with hundreds of companies to take them through this process, one-on-one, I've gone through that many, and then we've got so many people going through the book. And I'm finding that oftentimes businesses will fall into one of these 4 stages. And if you figure out which stage you're in, it then helps to unlock what you need to get in place to move through to the next stage. So I call these the 4 stages of business systemization. And the first stage is over here on the right, and it's survival mode. And the name kind of gives it away. It's not a very nice place to be. And the performance you'll find when you're operating in survival mode feels a little bit like this. It's very up and down. It's not consistent. You're chasing work, you're getting work, you're doing work, and then you're back to chasing and getting more work as well. So yeah, not a great place to be. Probably some of the the characteristics or dead giveaways to figure out if you're in that space is you find that the team makes things up as they go. There's no real way of doing things. So they just go, oh, yeah, let's just do it this way. And it ends up being different for each time a client comes through, or depending on which team member's doing it. Oftentimes, it's very much firefighting mode as well. Wherever is the biggest fire in the business seems to be what gets the most attention. And the business and the team, they don't really connect with the idea of systems and processes. In fact, they probably even hate processes. Like they don't have any documented, and they wouldn't follow them even if you had them in place. Oftentimes at this level, probably one of the biggest giveaways that you're in this space is where the business owner is the bottleneck. And more than that, they don't even recognize that they're the bottleneck. So it's almost like this idea of unconscious incompetence. They're the thing that's holding it. So at least if you recognize that you as a business owner, or even if you're part of the leadership team, if you recognize that you're a part of this bottleneck, just having the understanding that that's true will help elevate you into the next stage, which is what we call stationary. Now, stationary, again, doesn't sound like an awesome place to be. It's better than survival mode. And I'll just color that in there just there. And some of the characteristics to think about if you're in this stage, this is usually where the systems and the processes are stored in the team member's head, and you're very key person dependent. So if Sally in accounts doesn't come in on Wednesday, invoices aren't getting issued out. If Sally needs to take a week off for holidays, oh, we need a scramble. And, oh, Sally, can you still pay wages on Thursday? I know you're on holidays, but can you do it anyway? Like, that's what it feels like. You're very person dependent. Some people might follow a little bit of process and others may not, but there's no, like, the performance at this level in your business just feels like you're flatlining or an ever so slight increase. So you don't feel great at this level. The secret to break through this level here and move through is we need to then start to extract the knowledge. So the knowledge is there. You've got some great team members. We just have to get it out of their head, and then that helps us move into the next stage. Now, the next stage is what we call scalable. And scalable is one of those things. It's funny, like there's a lot of books that kind of talk about, oh, yes, we want to get to scalable stage, and it's part of the journey, but we don't necessarily want to stop here because you're kind of like on the way. As you start to scale and you scale your systems, what does that mean? It means you've got some of your systems partially documented. So maybe your finance department has a couple of good systems. Maybe you have one or two or a good number of systems maybe in your operations, but your marketing isn't systemized, or maybe your management isn't systemized, or, there's basically, it's very patchy at best. That's probably the way to think about it. And it's quite clunky, like the way that you're managing responsibility, who is doing what by when, and there's no real clear delineation on what success looks like for some of these different tasks. And probably the biggest giveaway, like you'll know if you're in Scalable, if you find that you're constantly having to remind team to follow process. That's the giveaway. If you have to constantly say, oh, we have a way of doing this here, or here, did you check the process? Oh, we need to be doing it this way. It's all about if you're reminding at this stage. So, you're starting to feel a little bit better in this area, but the performance, and it's starting to take off, but you're not quite at that final stage, which is what happens when you build a systems-driven business that has the right culture. The key to move through this stage is we need to start to organize the knowledge. And what does that mean? If we're extracting it out of the brains of the team members and finding our way of doing things, it's then having it centrally located. It's making sure that when a team member is assigned a task, they can find how to do that task if they're not quite sure. And there's a close linkage there. And then that helps to set up the expectation of what success looks like when they complete that particular task. And then the final stage here, which is really the area that we all want to get to, is saleable. And saleable, it's not necessarily that you're going to sell your business, but rather it's at a level where someone would want to buy it. What does that mean? That means that you've got all of your different departments documented, and they're documented completely, and you have a way of doing things. It means that your business doesn't have key person dependency. Because you've got these systems and processes, that means when the potential acquirer comes in, they look at your business and they go, oh, they're evaluating risk for themselves. And if all of, the key team members walk out, they're going to say, what does this mean for me? Can the business still continue to function? So if we can de-risk that for them and have the business running a bit more like a Swiss watch, that makes it very saleable, and also creates some form of optionality for you. Because while you might not think about selling, you don't know what's going to happen around the corner. So you might as well prepare as though you were going to sell. So if that opportunity or that situation happens, you're ready to go. And this is really where we start to see, the biggest wins. This is where you start to see industry leaders, best in class, what they start to do at this level. They never reach perfection, but they're in pursuit of perfection. So they're looking to optimize and improve process and figure out how they can continually do things better. And the dead giveaway that you've made it to saleable is when someone says, or your team says, this is how we do things here. When you've got multiple people on your team, when new recruits come on board, when new people come on board, this is how we do things here. And these are the 4 stages of business systemization. And I mean, it'd be great to kind of get a bit of a feel for the group. Like if we thought of a continuum down the bottom here, and in fact, if we do this as 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, and who knows, maybe you have a foot in 2 and a foot in 3, but I'd love it if you could type into the chat, giving me a feeling for which stage you feel like you might be in. And Keith, as people are typing in that number as well, I don't know if you've got any insights, like you would have seen businesses grow through these 4 stages. So I'd be interested for insights you've got.
Yeah, great question. So coaches and clients, go ahead and type your numbers in there. It's interesting for the mid-market, which I can speak primarily to. I see a lot of businesses in 2 and 3 with their hair on fire, not knowing what to do or where to start on systemization. Now, having said that, I know that the equity value of a company that is well systematized gets absolutely a stronger multiple. I've seen that time in and time out. So your point about sellability in stage 4 is very, very, very important.
Yes, yeah. And oftentimes, like I think, and I know there's a couple mentioning that they felt like they were in survival mode. Just to, pump up your tires a little bit, I do feel like by being on this webinar and in the Gravitas community, if anything, you're probably even starting to cross over into stationary, because part of moving from survival to stationary is at least having an awareness that you are the bottleneck, because then it makes it easier to go, great, I'm here, I want to get to here. And then we start to think about, okay, well, what has to happen at each of the stages to progress? So if you feel like you're in survival mode, you have to think about extracting that knowledge. And then once you get it extracted, we need to organize it. Once it's organized, we start to think about optimizing it. So that's kind of like part of these stages that we move through. Now, one other idea that I wanted to kind of talk through and have you think about is how to think about your business as one big system, because this is kind of like some foundational thinking when it comes to seeing your business as a system. Because I believe, if this is your business and the business as a whole is one big system, you'll find that there are subsystems that sit underneath this. So you might have sales, you might have marketing, you might have operations, we might have HR, we might have finance, and then we might also have management. Now, you might have some different departments or different names that you'll give your departments, but this kind of fits quite well across the board. But if you think about your business and the health of the overall system, the health of the overall system depends on the health of the subsystem. So if you are particularly weak or have a poor performing finance department, it'll take down the overall health of the whole business. And sometimes you can kind of, have some departments that help to support some of the other departments if they're weak. But if you think about business as a system, and there are these subsystems, and how can we get the best performing health of each subsystem? That's going to then create the health for the overall system. We can start to create this and almost turn it into a bit of a game where we sit there and we think about the 80-20. The 80-20 is a great way, a lens to apply when thinking about systems. And it's a lot of things in business, but there are probably 20% of the systems underneath the sales that deliver 80% of the result for the sales department. There's probably 20% of the systems that sit underneath the marketing that deliver 80% of the result for marketing. And it's the same in all of these departments. If we went for the 80-20, if you're looking to systemize your business and you had to start somewhere, starting with an 80-20 underneath each of these different departments. And then once you identified what they were, imagine then systematically checking these off over time. Maybe this is a 12-month process. Maybe this is a 6-month process, depending on how much resources you want to throw at it. But if you start there, then this becomes a game that you can win. And that's really what it's about. A lot of people they struggle because they don't necessarily know where to start. Now, there's an exercise that we're about to do now that we can even go beyond that and a step further, which is an exercise we'll all go through. But I'll just double check, Keith. Have we got a volunteer who's going to be the person that'll go through this exercise with us?
We don't have a volunteer yet. And so we can do one of three things, David. If you want to use a company that you've used before, or I can use one of the clients that's coming to mind for me, or we could even use Gravitas as an example. And while you're thinking about that, I put everyone into the chat. I love this quote by James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. David, I'm sure you're familiar with this, is you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And so the level of the systems will absolutely be critical to your success.
And I love the James, like that idea of habits and then linking them to systems, because there's such a close link there. Like before something becomes a habit, it often starts off as a system and you do things a certain way and then it becomes a habit. I almost feel like some of those terms are interchangeable as well. So look, I think what might be interesting, if you're open for it, I'm glad you've said that you'd be happy to do it. Like I'd love to run through this with Gravitas. Sure. And we'll have a little bit of a think about your business and look at the critical client flow through that lens. And obviously the attendees and people watching this will be able to then think about it in their business. So if we start off thinking, your business is a system and there's a handful of systems underneath each department, even that there still can be a little bit of a sense of overwhelm of where do I get started. So the exercise we're about to go through is a way to answer the question, what are the top 10 to 15 systems in your business that you should consider systemizing and starting first? So everybody can follow along at home. Get yourself an A4 bit of paper and just as I'm asking Keith these questions, think about it through the lens of your own business. The critical client flow basically identifies the linear journey that the prospect and then the client and the business goes through to deliver a core product or service. So by identifying that upfront, we can then even use the critical client flow to further pinpoint where the pain is, which is often the point at where you should start your systemization. So if we think about Gravitas and Keith, I don't know, there's two ways that you could go about this. You could think in terms of a coach and who a coach works with, or B, you could think about Gravitas almost like as the umbrella business where they're in the business of getting coaches and you're trying to attract those into your world. I don't know if you have a preference.
Yeah, let's use the latter there, because earlier you said, hey, services would be a good illustrative example. So I'll come at this as if we're talking about acquiring a new coach who wants to join Gravitas.
Perfect. So in the top left-hand corner, that's the first thing that we're going to do. We'll think about who the target client is. So who would be the ideal person to become a Gravitas coach?
So the one I'll use today is a CEO or a C-level executive who is in transition and they're looking for the next challenge in their career to leverage their experience and skills.
Perfect. Perfect. And now, for your business, and everybody goes through this exercise as well, when I talk about this idea of the primary product or service, so firstly, the target client everybody wants to think about is the dream client, the person you would love, many more of, the person who pays your advertised prices, refers friends and family, and they're a pleasure to deal with. And then we can see Keith's just identified that there. Now, the next thing to think about is what is the first product or service that you would sell to that target client, which would be a great gateway or entry into your world. It's that first starting point. So when we had the digital agency, for us, even though we did all SEO services and Google AdWords and all that sort of stuff, for us, the first primary product or service, we love to sell a website because a website had a clear engagement, took about 3 months. We could decide whether or not we liked working with a client and if we'd continue to work with them. So it was a great starting product. So do you have anything, Keith, that would be what's the first thing someone might do?
Yeah, the first thing is actually experiencing the content and the community. So that's what we call a coach symposium. We do those twice a year. We did one a couple weeks ago. In fact, David, you joined us for that. So the coach symposium is a great opportunity for a coach to look in, meet other peers in the community, and learn the content and learn together.
Perfect. So when we think about, we've clearly identified the target client, and that is the coach symposium as the starting point for them. The next question to ask, and as everybody does this, think in terms of what are you currently doing, not what you would like to be doing. Because really easy for people to default into, oh yeah, we know this strategy or that's a strategy for lead generation. We always want to come back to what's working and what are you currently doing now? Because Systemology is actually about capturing current best practice, not inventing something new. So what are the ways that you currently get people to attend the coach symposium? I'm imagining referrals is quite big for you.
Yeah, referrals would be the first primary driver, referrals from existing community members. Next would be our presence on social media, specifically LinkedIn, where we're sharing content and the community experience.
Yeah.
And then I do a podcast that interviews the thought leader, an author, or a senior coach about their journey, their content, etc.
Perfect. And would they'd probably be your primary drivers? Are there any other ones that jump out? I know you also do speaking and you're on other podcasts.
Yeah, I would say let's use those as the three primary drivers. That would be great.
Perfect. And then if someone was interested in, let's say, the coach symposium or interested in getting certification as a Gravitas coach, how does that first inquiry come in for you? If someone's interested and they're raising their hand, is that they fill out a form? Do they pop up, call you or send in an email? How does that inquiry usually come in?
Yes, it can come from one of two ways. It can be a direct referral and then have a live conversation with a team member. So that can come from an email, or it comes through the website and they fill out a type form, a little bit about themselves, their background.
Excellent. Now, after that inquiry comes in, and you touched on it, you said it sounded like there's a call or something. So I'm imagining, and there might be some sub steps underneath each one of these. I think part of the critical client flow, they're small boxes for a reason to stop the detail-oriented person trying to get into all of the details and explain the process. We just want 2 or 3 words in each one of these boxes. There's probably some steps under here you're starting to imagine. things like some sort of qualification, like are they worth following up? Is their email legit? Does it look like do we look at their LinkedIn profile? Those sorts of things. But after you've done that, so let's say you've qualified them, then it sounds like the next step was to have a call with them.
Yeah, and we would call that a discovery call, and that aligns with one of our core values, which is we win together, we don't play, and we're trying to discern what they are looking for in a win for their direction, as well as their skills and their core values, their persona, and then likewise for ourselves. We want to understand what a win for us would be in the type of individual.
Perfect. And then after the discovery call, is there, and let's say that it's a win-win for both, they're a good fit for you, you're a good fit for them. Do you have any sort of proposal or anything that's sent out, or do you send them to a page about the coach symposium? What usually happens next?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One, we have a deeper discussion on the business model, which is beyond the discovery call. So the
Yes,
economics of coaching, both the cost as well as the generation of revenue. Okay, and that can be a sharing of information as well as a live call. And so that's after the discovery call.
do you have a name for that one? Is that like a part two or a deep dive or something like that?
Yeah, we can call it a deep dive. I think that's a good way to describe it because they've
Perfect.
screened the discovery call and we're still moving forward. Now let's get into the heart of the economic model and what it looks like to be certified.
Perfect. And then off the back of that deep dive call is there some sort of what usually happens there? Like, let's say at this point, it's very clearly a win-win. What is that next step as we move them closer to the symposium?
Yes, we would often they'll talk to another coach so they can understand from an existing happy client coach member what it
Yes.
is to be a coach in Gravitas, the character of the organization, what it looks like to get started and grow their business.
Perfect. And then after that, at this point, I'm imagining um, the potential coach is feeling quite good that, yeah, this is, there's probably going to be a good fit because there's a few hoops they have to jump through. What happens next? Do they go to a page? Like, do they order a ticket to the symposium, or what happens next?
Yeah, they get a registration link that we give to them. So it's registration on invitation. Not everyone can go. So we give them a registration invitation and then they
Yes,
opt into that and they get registered for the symposium. And by now they have met a few of the team members as well as maybe one or two coaches. So they're not going to feel alone when they go. They're going to know someone there.
perfect. And then, is there anything that happens behind the scenes in the lead up to the symposium at Gravitas head office? Like, is that something like, are they getting entered into a database and some sort of onboarding, and maybe there's some emails and questionnaires or anything like that?
Yes, and this is where so we use HubSpot as our CRM, so we're collecting information on them, and we're really seeking to understand the when for them and the qualifications. And often, too, behind the scenes, we will ask a few coaches to be kind of their what I'd call their sponsors in the symposium, so that when they're in the symposium, they have someone that is interacting with them, asking them more questions as a peer, so that they can really feel the relational value of Gravitas as well as the content value.
Perfect. And then there's the delivery of the symposium, which would be the running the event,
Mhm.
um, and then post running the event. After that, I'm assuming you have some sort of follow up or another call or a touch base to then kind of go, great, where do we go from here?
Yes, yes. We set the expectation that invitation to the symposium will be leading to a decision, and we'll have a conversation after the symposium to gauge the value, answer any final questions, and then we're at a point of decision to go forward or to not go forward.
Yes, yes, perfect. So what we've just identified here is the critical client flow for Gravitas, where the coach is the client. When participants and people watching this are going through and thinking about this about their own business, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. One, obviously Keith knows what he's doing and he's well thought through each of these stages. and you can see there's something at each. It's quite possible as you're doing this that you might go, oh, I don't have anything in that box down there or that box down there. And I mean, sometimes you might even skip boxes because your business is a little bit different. Maybe you're a product-based business and the sales process isn't quite the same. But just going through this exercise can be quite revealing if you're capturing what you're currently doing, not what you would like to be doing. Because I have a belief that every problem in business is a systems problem. So if you're having problem clients that are following you up every second day to say, where's my product or service? There's probably a good chance you don't have good onboarding processes for that client to set the expectations. If you don't have enough leads, there's a good chance you don't have enough lead generation methods. If you don't have, if you're having cash flow issues, maybe there's some issues around the way that you're collecting cash from your clients. So just looking for where it's patchy might also give you some ideas. Other things to keep in mind, obviously, these boxes, there's only a couple of words, and particularly when you get down to the delivery, there's most likely going to be loads of steps under this. Imagine what it takes for Keith and his team to pull together a symposium. And there are probably some, milestones and detailed processes under that. Like we've just captured very high level, and then that's been done by design. The way to tell if you've done your critical client flow correctly is to take what we've done and then share it with someone else, whether it's someone on your team or even someone who's just one step removed from the business. Can they understand your business and can they see the flow? Even if, I've worked with everyone from dog food companies to office cleaning companies to and these industries I don't know anything about. And doing this, I get that really clear visibility to understand, even though I don't know the micro detail, I should be able to understand the flow of the business. Then the next question after that comes, and everybody should be asking themselves this question at this point in time, is where is the pain felt within the critical client flow? Oftentimes, a team member or a team, sometimes it's almost like they self-sabotage as they start to grow. I see this particularly with coaches and things like that, actually, where as they start to grow, and they've got a good number of clients, they might not like the onboarding process or the invoicing process, or maybe it's the proposal process. And in the back of their head, they go, well, I don't really like that. And by selling more clients, that's going to equal pain because then I'm going to have to do this work that I don't really like. So then they start to push away prospects and they don't sell as hard as they could. Whereas once this becomes quite clear and you don't have key person dependency, there's a way of doing things, it's scalable, you then start to increase your capacity, which then means you can start to scale. So just a question for you, Keith, if there was an area that you were going to focus on where you think it needs the most amount of work, or if we said, Keith, you're about to get 100 times the coaches that you've currently got now, what area in this do you feel would break first?
I think there are two things. Looking at it vertically, the consistency of following and repeating the process is one, but the other one is a more efficient, stepwise deep dive call. If we were to expand the deep dive, just to hit the essence there and follow it every time.
Yeah, perfect. So I think that's a big part of the insight that someone wants to get going through this exercise, because now we're starting to think about where in the business are we going to focus our attention and what are we going to start to systemize first. So, we covered a little bit. I'm going to swap back to my slide deck here. Of course, if anyone's got any questions as we go, you just pop them in. I'm just going to make sure that my slide deck's popping up here just before I swap. Yeah. Okay. Actually, I might even. Yeah, here we go. Fantastic. So I'm just making sure my slides here are going to pop back up for you. And I'll make sure it's full screen so it looks good. There we go. Just going to do one last thing. Just sometimes when I swap over to the iPad. Now, the things that we've covered at the moment, we've thought a little bit about where you are currently. Then we've thought a little bit about where to start using the critical client flow. And the next area we need to start to think about is how to quickly and easily create systems. And that's the next area we want to move into. And I mean, a big part of this has to do with the picture in people's mind that they have around what a system is. And oftentimes, a lot of that baggage comes from McDonald's or other, well systemized companies. Like, I'll ask people, think of a systemized company. What comes to mind? McDonald's comes to mind, Amazon comes to mind, Google comes to mind, all of these companies that have been focusing on systems for such a long time. And we're looking at their completed product, where they are today. And then we're thinking we need to systemize our business to that level. Now, mindful, McDonald's has been systemizing for over 60 years. And if you're just getting started, you haven't quite nailed your process, to try and think that you start there is not going to serve you well. You want to, a little bit of extra homework is rent yourself the movie The Founder, which tells the McDonald's story. And this is a screenshot from one of the very early scenes in the movie where they're figuring out their systems for the first time. This is what your version 1 of a system should look like. You can see here, they went out onto a basketball court, they got some chalk, and they started mapping out, we'll put the front counter here. We'll have the fryers there. Yep, let's have the ice cream machine maker over here, and let's fry over here, all those sorts of things. And then they go, no, that doesn't work. Let's move it around. That's the way that systems start. Don't think about today. McDonald's has got Hamburger University with these big, thick manuals, and they can take 15-year-old kids off the street and get them flipping burgers in the shortest possible time. That's what happens once, we've optimized, but we need to think about where do we start. So kind of a big part of this is I want to rewire your brain as to how you think about systems, what a system is, and how do we make this as simple as possible? And I find this is particularly important for, mid-sized companies who sometimes can't help but overcomplicate business. And the bigger you get and the more complex something is, oftentimes the more challenging it becomes to scale. So to try and keep things as simple as possible actually makes scale infinitely easier. So for me, like, my definition of what a system is, it's just a consistent set of steps that, when followed, produce this consistent outcome. And that might just be something as simple as a video. Maybe, if we think about the deep dive calls that Keith wants to really kind of nut out that system and process, he might just start off by recording as many of those deep dive calls as he can and putting that into one location. That's a fantastic starting point. It's better than nothing. Then it means, every other coach that comes behind him can start off their training by listening to 10 calls with Keith, having that process. And then we could even go a step beyond that to pull some of the key steps out of those videos to create a bit of a checklist. But a big part of this is just about keeping it simple. And I remember Reed Hastings from Netflix, he made this comment and it always stuck with me. He said, when we started to systemize, we were looking to systemize like McDonald's, and we wanted to make sure that we dummy-proofed everything. So we documented everything down to this micro level of detail. And what we found was we dummy-proofed everything, but it meant only dummies wanted to work here. And that's when I was like, you're right, you've got it. Like, I want to hire intelligent people and have systems that help to support that intelligent person and show them how to win. But I don't need to go down to this super micro detail and tell them how to suck eggs and do things that they already know how to do. So it's finding that balance. And chances are you and I, listening to this, you're not building a hamburger business. So don't systemize like a hamburger business. And when you capture systems for the first time, just capture the most probable. Like, there are infinite variations. Just go, with Keith, we talked about, he probably has multiple target audiences he could go after, but he picked just one, and he picked one primary product. And let's just capture the process that person goes through on that deep dive. And don't worry about all of the variations. Variations can get handled by higher skilled team members. Training and systems and processes is about a starting point and taking someone as a new person who comes on board who doesn't have much knowledge, and then getting them 80% of the way there. So I want to kind of give just a couple of tips on creating systems over and above what we already have. And the best way to do that, because everybody's busy in your business, we need to think about how do we make this easy? Like you're busy as the business owner or a department head. We need to think about how to make this easy for everybody. So the best way I can think of is with a case study. And there are 2 lessons I want to teach here. This is Chris Mulcahy. He runs quite a large accountancy practice here in regional Australia. Basically, what they do is they service agricultural businesses and farms and things like that. They help them out with cash flow management and tax planning. Now, Chris had already read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, and he was sold on this idea of systems. And then he came across SYSTEMology and he instantly got it. So he started going through the process. He started off with his critical client flow. And then the lesson, the secret, because there are 2 here that I want you to grasp. The first one is Chris didn't drive it himself. He identified what we call a systems champion, because to create systems, consider it a 2-person job. You've got the person with the knowledge, and then you've got a separate person who does the documentation. Because if you go to your knowledgeable team members, who are oftentimes your busiest team members, and you say to them, hey, you got to systemize what you're doing, they'll sit there and they'll go, yeah, look, this is important. This is not urgent. I've got 100 other things that I need to be doing first, and I don't even like documenting. So yeah, I'll get to it one day. You're better off finding someone who can support the knowledgeable workers, who can meet with them, record them doing the task. Let's say we recorded Keith running 10 of those calls. Then we take those calls, give it to a systems champion, and we say, listen to these calls, pull out the key steps, find where the similarities are, and then report it back to Keith and say, hey, Keith, here are the 10 steps that I identified you went through on these calls. And Keith, it's much easier for Keith as a knowledgeable worker to edit something than start from scratch. Everybody loves to edit. No one likes to start from a blank page. So that's the first secret. The second secret is this idea of you want to develop your system for creating systems. Like it's how you do this. You need to develop a process that your systems champion follows. Maybe your systems champion meets with the knowledgeable worker, records them doing it, goes away, documents it, sends it back for, revision by the knowledgeable worker. It goes back to that person reviews it, submits it to your department head signs off on it, and then we roll it out. You just got to figure out what that flow is, just so that way you've got, that process, and that system for systems is a great starting point. But it's, in summary for this little point, it really is just about trying to keep it as simple as possible. Start off with a video first. Get someone to watch the video and pull out those key points and create version 1 of your systems. And try and figure out your systems champion. Like, I don't know if you already know who that person is. If you do, fantastic. Or is that someone that you might need to recruit? Like, I've worked with plenty of companies where the first thing that they've said is, well, we don't have anyone who would be a good fit for that, or everybody's already too busy, and in situations like that, maybe you go and hire a return to work mum or dad, and you get them for 10, 15 hours a week, and you engage them for 3 or 6 months, and you say, right, I want you to systematically work through the critical client flow, and I want you to help us document and capture this. And then beyond that, who knows, maybe you keep them on beyond that, but at least initially, starting this process, you'll find incredibly valuable.
David, let me ask one question there. My sense is that your systems champion, not that they're brand new, but someone who's been in the organization for years may be too embedded to have the objectivity of someone who's newer coming in from the outside. Is that generally one of the principles that works in having a systems champion?
Definitely. The person you want them to be curious. You want them to be naturally organized and detail orientated. It's the person who already likes to create a checklist or a process, or just can't help themselves. They like things organized. I even love people who are almost a little bit OCD, obsessive compulsive, when it comes to that. And then, yes, you're right. If they come in like that idea of having some level of curiousness, if they come into the business and they're fresh and they're seeing everything with fresh eyes, then they'll be able to say, oh, they can ask questions when, like, sometimes you'll have the systems champion join with the knowledgeable person as they're doing the task. Maybe they meet on Zoom next time that your accounts person issues out an invoice and they're on the call recording it and they say, oh, why did you press that button? Oh, what was that button you pressed again? Because it's really easy for knowledgeable workers with a lot of experience to have embedded in the steps into their brain. They don't even think about it. Right. So yeah, I think definitely that outside perspective, and it gives them a chance to kind of go, do as a documenter and a systems champion, do I have enough knowledge on my own to execute on this? Mm-hmm. So I think that that's real key. And I mean, part of this, what we're trying to talk through here is this idea of getting your team on board and making it easy for them, because some people will connect with the idea with systems and processes and others won't. And especially if to date, if you're trying to reverse engineer and build a systems culture into your business after your business has already grown to a certain size, it gets more challenging. In fact, the bigger you get, the more challenging it comes to insert systems thinking and, hey, we have a way of doing things. And the resistance always comes from your existing staff. And that's why it gets harder the bigger you become, because you've got more staff and we need to change that culture. So that's oftentimes why I talk about, the sweet spot. But you are where you are, and there are probably just some different considerations. But all new team members that come on board, if you've got some systems and processes and you develop your onboarding process, this is all they've ever known. This is just how we do things here. And if you don't like it, then you might not be the right fit. And we'll figure that out up front. You'll get the biggest resistance from the team member who's been with you for 10 years, who says, oh, I've always done it this way. Why do I have to change? Or, why are we capturing what I'm doing? I've always done this task. And you need to kind of navigate through that.
Well, and so let's ask a hard question there. So for the owner or the founder, et cetera, they're getting the benefits of systematizing through eventually the scalable and the saleable side. The new person may be getting the benefit of participating and helping and fresh eyes. So what is the conversation with that 5 to 10 year person who's kind of got their arms crossed and say, okay, I'll do it? Yes. What's the benefit for them? What's in it for them?
I love it that you have gone straight to that point of what's in it for them, because that is what most businesses miss when they come to introduce this change. What they'll do is they'll come in and they'll say, hey, we want to systemize the business and create process. And the reason, the team member in their head, they're sitting there going, why are they doing this? Are they looking to replace me? Is this so that the business owner can go on a big holiday and lie on a beach and have large amounts of money deposited into their bank account with little or no work? Like, how does that benefit me? And the key for this change to happen is to really think about what is the benefit for the team member and help them to understand what the benefit is for them. Now, that'll vary from person to person. The first thing that you want to think about, though, is I identify the people that automatically resonate with this change and they're happy to kind of move forward, and you've got some people that will just participate because they'll see the benefit for the whole and they'll already know how that translates to them. But for others, you need to find out what it is for them. And it might be, we tell the team, hey, how when you go away on holidays and you'll take 1 week off, when you come back, you've got your inbox is exploding, you've got 100 tasks to catch up on, and you spend the next 5 weeks catching up for your 1 week holiday. Well, what we're doing is we're trying to systemize things so team members can step in and do certain tasks and keep things moving. So you don't have to think about it. You can have some time off. And when you come back, you can hit the ground running. Similarly, use and blame COVID. Hey, we know that changing circumstances, people are working from home. Who knows, you might get sick, family member might get sick, and you might need to have some time off. And I want to make sure that our organization can really support you in doing that. So we have to capture your process. Now, that might help some people, but then other people you might say, oh, if you want to move your way up in our organization, the way that we do that is if you can delegate some of the tasks that you're doing to lower cost team members, that actually makes you more valuable to the team, because now you don't have to do these 6 administrative tasks. We can pass that off and you can handle higher quality problems. That actually moves you up. So by capturing your systems and your processes, you can move your way up in the organization. I suppose the takeaway here is, and a great, operations manager will kind of, and someone who works with change management will be able to identify what's most important to the individual. And it's usually only the ones that are most resistant to change. Some people will just go along with this, especially with COVID, because there's change everywhere, change at home, change in the community, change in business. And if we just say we're changing now, there's never been a better time to systemize than right now.
Yeah, COVID has given us that muscle, whether we wanted it or not, of change. David, we have time probably for one more question, and I'd like to put it out there for you. Talk about the difference in a larger organization, where in a company where you have 25, 50 employees, go from there to a multi-site, multi-division company in the mid-market, maybe like a 500 or $300 million company that's spread out and has multiple divisions. How does systemology apply to the larger enterprise?
Mm-mm. A big part of it will depend on what their systems culture is currently like at the moment. A big part of the work that we also do with systemology is thinking about building out the onboarding and the recruitment. And for systemology can help with those larger companies. If they haven't yet thought about this, you want to be projecting that you are a systems-driven business in your recruitment process. Maybe you list a couple of the systems and processes that relate to a particular position when you're advertising it. So you're projecting up front saying these are the types of tasks and processes that you'll be doing in your day-to-day process. Similarly, when you're onboarding a team member, walking them through the critical client flow, having them to understand the way that your business works and where they fit into the organization, and training them up front around systems and processes is also key. Some of the later stages of systemology, like systemology is a 7-stage framework, and the 6th stage, which is scale, is probably most relevant to these larger organizations as well. And it moves beyond the critical client flow. And effectively what we do is, it was almost like that first graphic that I showed you, where we thought about our business as a system. We want to do the 80-20 in each one of the different departments. And a part of this has to do with thinking about like a set number of periods. Like we think about what happens on a regular basis, what happens on a weekly basis, what happens on a monthly basis, what happens on a quarterly or an annual. And we put the handful of tasks underneath each of those in each of the different departments. And then we start to fill in some of those blanks, and we start to train department heads how to think and what a good task looks like. That's a big part of it. I mean, it's a big question. We could probably dive into that a little bit more if you've got any finer details, or if that's a good start.
Yeah, that's probably a good start. And David, we're going to invite you back. I mean, we just got started today. I want to really shine a light on what you 2 words you said that you put together. A culture of systems. Great companies eventually will build into their culture the systems mentality. And that's why it's so important to start when a company is smaller, so that as new employees come in the future, they grow up and they learn, well, this is just what we do here. We build systems. That's a great place to be. So
hopefully we ignited that fire in the attendees. That's really what I want you to get from this session, is to kind of rethink systems and think, what are some of the assumptions you have around systems, and how might we challenge those? Maybe you've just jumped to conclusions, because it is very possible for a business, a founder who's a visionary, a big picture person who might not, connect with systems or feel like they're a systems person. That doesn't mean they can't own a systems driven business. It's very possible. And we don't need to build a McDonald's here. You can find great, intelligent, smart people and create systems that don't introduce bureaucracy or extra red tape. Like, let's challenge a lot of those assumptions and go a little bit deeper, right? I mean, a lot of this is what we talk about in the book, Systemology. I know we've referenced it. People can grab it on Amazon or Audible, but that's a great place to start to challenge some of these thoughts.
Okay. Well, with that, our time is up. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. And David, thanks for getting up early tomorrow and joining us. And everyone will be back in December. Trisetta Briggs will be talking to us about the importance of diversity in creating high performance cultures. So thanks again for joining us. David, enjoy your day.
Perfect. Thank you. Great to meet everyone.
Okay. Bye bye.